So, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all those who are in Canada and good evening to India. We are extremely pleased to present to you our third session in collaboration with Green and Spiegel on Canadian immigration. So immigration and global mobility is an important sector for the Chamber, since many of our members have interest in opening business, in expanding business, to do business in Canada, which entails moving the employees, moving their families. And in this is where we focus on having sessions with immigration companies so that we can help them understand and know how to move forward on this. While we focused on the startup visa program in the past, tonight we want to address the opportunities in the Canadian Federal Express Entry Program, temporary work permits for individuals and corporates. Bilateral immigration and company formations also entail taxation in relation to bilateral treaties, exemptions, and implications. And that is something that we will ask GNS and Tony Schweitzer to share with us during the course of this session. It is my pleasure now to introduce Mr. Stephen Green, Senior Partner at Green and Spiegel. Those of you who haven't joined us for the earlier sessions where you would have had the occasion to meet him, let me just quickly give a brief introduction about him. Stephen Green is a practicing immigration lawyer. He has 30 years of extensive experience in all areas of Canadian immigration. He has been identified as a leading practitioner in immigration law. I would also like to introduce Eren Sari, who looks after business development at GNS. Eren's retail banking experience with international clients led him to take a role with HSBC's Global Investor Immigration Services. And last but not least, I'm privileged to have Mr. Tony Schweitzer, partner at Dentons Canada LLP, who is a subject matter expert in international tax law, pension fund structuring, and cross-border structures. This is especially important for our member companies who may have operations or tie-ups in the United States. Stephen, I'd now like to hand it over to you to take this forward with our members. All the best. I'm sure all of you are going to have a great productive session.
Great, thank you, Nadira, and good evening, everyone. As Nadira talked about, we're going to talk about really helping individuals set up in Canada their businesses and perhaps also assist in transferring their employees. But most importantly, before a company thinks about establishing in Canada, thinks about creating new employment opportunities for some of their employees that are in India that are transferring to Canada, or perhaps they already have offices in the United States and looking at coming to Canada, tax is very important. You must understand what are the tax liabilities of your company if you decide to establish inside of Canada. What are the tax liabilities for your employees? And once you have done that research and are satisfied with respect to the tax liabilities, then it's time, in my opinion, to talk about actually making the move. And I think it's also important to once again review very quickly the environment inside of Canada with respect to immigration. Immigration is open in Canada. The Minister of Immigration just 2 days ago indicated how important immigration is to Canada and how we want to facilitate the individuals that want to come with respect to their skilled backgrounds, with respect to companies that want to come and set up. And the uncertainty that is currently occurring in the United States with respect to the Trump administration's policies has caused a tremendous amount of companies now looking to Canada to create a footprint in North America because of the tremendous uncertainty in establishing a company in the United States, the uncertainty of keeping your employees in the United States. So that is the current environment in Canada. So today we're going to first start off with something called the intercompany transfer. And what that is about is, let's say you have a successful company currently operating in India or anywhere around the world, quite candidly, and you feel that Canada would be the proper place for you to expand your global network. The government has a program where you can go ahead and set up a branch or subsidiary or an affiliate office inside of Canada. And basically, you must demonstrate to the Canadian government that you currently have a company operating outside of Canada, and it makes good business sense for you to establish this branch or subsidiary inside of Canada. And once you've done that and made that establishment to the Canadian High Commission in New Delhi, then you would be able to transfer individuals to Canada that you believe are important for your company to grow and expand inside of Canada. And the type of individuals that are eligible to transfer are three types: executives, senior managers, and individuals that have specialized knowledge of your sort of processes. They're unique in your company, and you need them in Canada because there really isn't that type of knowledge available inside of Canada. And the way it begins is that once you establish who you want to transfer to Canada, either an executive, a senior manager, or someone with specialized knowledge, then those people can apply for a work permit to come to Canada. And those work permits generally are good for 1 year at the beginning, because the government wants to make sure that you are for real, that you're not just coming to Canada and you don't really have a good idea. So they give you a work permit for 1 year. And then after operating for at least 1 year, depending on the category in which you came to Canada, you can then extend that up to 6 years in one category and 4 more years in another category. So you see the type of work permit you get is quite long, and it provides you with the ability to bring your specialized knowledge, your executives, your managers to come to Canada. And you can see from the slide in front of you that specialized knowledge is quite unique. And you must be able to demonstrate that. And it's important to understand, especially if you are an IT company, well, of course, everyone has proprietary knowledge in their software platforms. So that's not what they're looking for with specialized knowledge. So you have to have, you possess knowledge that will make you competitive, unique, contribute to the Canadian employer, knowledge that's gained from experience with your current employer. So it's important to understand that of the three categories, executive, manager, and specialized knowledge is the most difficult because you must demonstrate the uniqueness. To qualify, if you fall within the specialized knowledge area, or you fall within the executive or manager, you must demonstrate that you are currently working for the company outside of Canada, and that you have worked for the company for at least 1 year in the past 3 on a full-time basis. So you see, it's a great program for companies that want to open up offices inside of Canada. And there's also a pathway to immigration, which we'll talk about a little later. Now, if you do not fall within one of these specialized knowledge or executive or managers, and you currently have a company in Canada, you can use something called the Global Skills Strategy. And what that is the Canadian government recognizes sometimes we need skilled workers for a very short period of time. And if the company exists in Canada and you want to hire someone for a short period of time, they can actually come in as a visitor, work for up to 30 days in a year on their visitor record that they get. So that's a really sort of great concept because it's not a lot of work involved with respect to getting a work permit. You don't have to go through the advertising, showing they aren't Canadians, things like that. This one permitted people to come into Canada for up to 30 days a year and come in as a visitor and get paid, which is really unique. So that's the global skills strategy for visitors. And again, it's Canada recognizing how important skilled workers are for us and facilitating those people to come in. But there's another program in this global skills program, which indicates that if you are involved in the IT business, so you're a software type of company in Canada, and you have an office located in Canada, and you want to hire a new employee, someone that hasn't worked for you in the past, that doesn't qualify for that intra-company transfer, then if you offer the job to someone that does a job that's indicated in the next slide, then you can get that person to come to Canada. So let's look at the types of jobs that I'm talking about. And they're called the Category B jobs. And what these jobs indicate are really IT types of jobs. So if you're a software engineer, a computer systems manager, you can invite a foreign worker to Canada. How long does it take to get the work permit? Well, the government says to you as a company established in Canada, saying, okay, let's have an agreement between the government and you. You as a company promise to help Canadians. You promise to reach out to underrepresented communities that have trouble getting jobs in the IT area. You're going to reach out to university and try to hire some recent graduates. And if you agree to do certain things, then we as a government understand that there's a big shortage of IT workers. You don't have to advertise and show that there aren't Canadians available. And we will give you an approval certificate if you do one of the jobs located in Category B to your company within, if you can imagine, 10 days. So you say to the government, hey, I want to bring a computer and information systems manager. I found that person who's in India. Will you give me a certificate so that person can then go to the Canadian High Commission and apply for their work permit? The government promises within 10 days, you as an employer will get that certificate. And they further promise that within 10 days after submitting the work permit application in the High Commission in Delhi, you will get a work permit. So what you're really seeing is that the Canadian government is expediting people that are on this Category B list in getting their work permits. And it provides you as an employer with the ability to predict how long it will take for you to get your temporary worker here. And it also provides you with transparency. You know it's going to take about a month, let's say, to get that worker here. Unlike in the United States, where H's, if you're lucky, can take months and months and months and months and months to get. It's a lottery system, so you have unknown. Canada, you have predictability. And you as an employer, as a business person inside of Canada, can proceed and bring these people in. So when I say bring people in, who is included in the family? So if you get a work permit approval to come to Canada, all of your dependents are permitted to come with you. So if I got a work permit approved to come, either as an intercompany transfer or under this global skills strategy, my spouse could come with me, my common law partner could come with me, and next slide, Aaron, please, my dependent child could come with me. And my dependent child means anyone under the age of 22. And it's quite interesting that many of the universities in the province of Ontario, if you come with your child and they're at university age, you may also get exempted from foreign student fees. So it's a really great program. Not only does the dependent family gets to come, your child, if under 21, may be exempted from university foreign fees. Your children that are going to public school get to go to public school for free. And your partner or spouse gets an open work permit. So that's a great way to encourage families to come to Canada. And once you arrive in Canada, the government also said temporary foreign workers are great to come, but we would rather they turn into permanent residents, immigrants to Canada. So they developed an express entry program. And what that is that about 7 years ago, the government had a program where they produced a list of 1,881 occupations. And if you were on that list of occupations, then you could come to Canada and apply for immigration. But the problem was it was taking too long. And at one point, just before the government canceled that program, it was taking 7 years for people to come from India. 7, 8 years for people to come from China. They said that was silly. It was unfair to the person overseas, and it was unfair to the Canadians who needed the workers to come. So they canceled that program and they created a system called Express Entry. And 80% of the people that apply in the Express Entry system and that are invited get their immigration, their permanent residence, within 6 to 8 months. So wow, that is so fast. And there's two groups of people that go in the pool. So what happens is you go inside the pool and the government looks in the pool. They look at your age, your education. Were you educated in Canada? Were you educated overseas? Your work experience. Do you have only foreign work experience? Or do you have some Canadian work experience? Do you have a brother or sister living in Canada? Do you have a job offer waiting for you inside of Canada? How old are you? And they look inside this pool, and every 2 to 3 weeks, they see how many people are inside the pool, and they invite about 3,000 people every 2 to 3 weeks to get immigration. And there's two main groups of people in this pool. The first group are the people that get invited based on their Canadian experience, and it's called the Canada Experience class. And if you have a minimum of 1 year work experience in Canada in a skilled job, and you speak English at a certain level, the government will look in and invite you. So you need 1 year work experience and English at a certain level. And you get invited, and with that invitation, you can get your immigration within 8 months. And about 85% of the people that are invited out of that pool come through the Canada Experience class. The other 15% of the people come based on their work experience abroad. So they look at what type of work do they have abroad, their education abroad. They look at all of those types of things. And when I'm talking education, they're only looking at your university or college. Certificates like Microsoft, or you became a CPA, that is not formal education, that's licensing requirements. So it's very different. The government of Canada in the express entry system is only looking at formal education, university, diplomas, those types of things. And those are the two groups of people that are invited out of the pool. And again, it includes your family, husband, wife, all children under the age of 22. Everyone who comes to Canada must be healthy because we give free medicine to everyone. We have enough criminals in Canada, so you can't have a criminal record. And the chart that you're looking at shows the point system of who was pulled out of the draw in the past 6 months. So they just had a draw 3-4 days ago, and they looked in the pool system, and they picked people that were federal skilled workers, the ones that had work experience abroad, that you needed a minimum of 478 points. The weeks before, you needed 431 points, but they didn't allow anyone that had work experience abroad in the skilled worker program. So you see, we're looking in the pool, we're inviting people based on their skills, their human capital, the good things about the person. Money is not a question in this process. You're not coming and investing in Canada. Your wealth is your knowledge. And those are the people that they're looking at in this express entry system. You have to have a minimum amount of money because the government wants to make sure that when you come to Canada, you have enough money to support yourself, because you may not get a job right away. It may take you 2, 3, 4 months to get a job. So the government says, you know, for example, for a family of 4, you may need about $21,000 in the bank to show the government. Understand that immigration is open. The express entry system is open. The intercompany transfer program is open despite the fact that there is a pandemic. The applications may be slower. For example, if you're applying in the express entry system, you have to have a medical done because we have free medicine. If you need a new heart, we give you a new heart. So you have to show the government that you're healthy. So if the doctors aren't working in India, for example, your application will be delayed. You will need a police certificate. If you can't get one because of COVID, the local police station is closed, your application will be delayed. You cannot go in the express entry system unless you have completed an IELTS general test or a CELPIP general test, or getting your degree evaluated by an evaluation credential assessment company like WES. So a lot of times things are on hold, not because of the Canadian government, but because of other governments. You can't get the documentation available to go inside of the pool. So those are my general comments with respect to the express entry, the setting up of companies. And as I said at the beginning of my discussion, as you are involved in setting up a company in Canada, tax is very important. So I'm going to now let Tony take over and talk about tax issues, which will be very helpful for you.
Thank you, Stephen, and good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about tax issues. I would like to spend a few minutes talking about corporate tax and individual tax in Canada. And these are the considerations that should apply to if you want to set up a corporation in Canada or if you're bringing employees to Canada. So let me say at the outset that there is a very, very broad range of taxes for both corporations and individuals. Depending on the amount of income, it can go from 0% to up to 53% on very excessive amounts of income. Most most tax rates are significantly lower, and I'll explain to you why. So let's begin on the corporate side. So the starting point here is, how do you wish to set up business operations in Canada? Most people, most business owners would choose a Canadian corporation to do business in Canada, but there are also other ways of setting up business operations in Canada by way of such a branch or an office. At this time, I will focus on corporations, but I will come back to the branches and offices. So let's talk about corporations. They're very, very easy to set up. The process of setting up a corporation usually takes a few days. They're not expensive to set up at all. And basically, anyone can be the owner or shareholder of a corporation. So it could be a corporation in India. It could be another Canadian corporation. It could be an individual anywhere in the world. Also, a director of a Canadian corporation can be a Canadian resident or someone who doesn't live in Canada. A corporation is easy to set up. It's incredibly flexible. And so having set up the corporation, the question is, well, how do I fund the corporation? And it can be done by way of a contribution of capital for shares of the corporation, or a combination of capital and by way of a loan. So on the corporate side, they're incredibly easy to set up. So now let's come to the tax side. They're basically, the first tax question is, well, what tax does a Canadian corporation have to pay? And so we say, we take the gross income of the corporation and we subtract all the expenses. So we take the gross income, we will subtract salaries, we will subtract rental income. If, for example, the corporation is paying management fees to another corporation in India or to anybody else, you would subtract that as well. There are lots of expenses that get deducted. And when you get to the net amount, that is the starting point for the amount in respect of which taxes are paid. Very generally, the tax rates for corporations vary from 12.5% on the first $500,000 of profits for certain types of corporations to up to approximately 25 to 26%. And as I said, the tax is based on the net income. In other words, after all the deductions have been made. In addition to that, Canada offers generous tax credits for, especially for corporations that are involved in research and development. So these credits can also be applied to taxes that would otherwise be payable. So it's important to determine whether the business would entitle the corporation to these tax credits, because that could reduce the tax that has to be paid even more. So there is a lot of planning that goes into this, and I'll tell you how we do it in a few minutes. So leaving the corporations aside, the second question that always comes up is, well, what taxes do employees have to pay? So here we have employees who are transferred to Canada. And the question is, well, what taxes do they have to pay? And basically, we have to make a distinction. This is a fundamental distinction between tax residents of Canada, who are taxed on their worldwide income, and employees and other individuals who are not tax residents of Canada, and they are not taxed on their worldwide income. They're only taxed on their employment income that they earn in Canada and from the sale of certain assets in Canada. So the key question is, for employees and for other people who are coming as permanent residents, who is a tax resident of Canada for Canadian tax purposes? And in summary, that you look to the following three factors. You say, does the person have a home in Canada? In other words, they can walk into a house or an apartment in Canada. Secondly, do they have immediate family and dependents in Canada? And thirdly, do they spend a considerable amount of time in Canada in the year? And if your answer to those questions is generally yes, then the person is viewed as a tax resident of Canada. And in making that determination, you also look to the Canada-India tax treaty, because even though Canada would say, well, we think this person, this employee or this permanent resident is a tax resident of Canada, you also have to look to the Canada-India tax treaty, because that says, Canada, before you make the final decision, does that person have stronger ties to India under the tax treaty? In which case, under these rules, which we call the tiebreaker rules, the person would be considered a tax resident of India and not Canada. In other words, you look to the treaty, the tax treaty, to make the final determination. So it's very important to do a very thorough review of whether the person would be a tax resident of Canada and therefore taxed on their worldwide income, or whether they're not a tax resident of Canada and then are only taxed generally on income earned in Canada. So tax residence, as you can see, is different from residence for other purposes. Unlike the US, which taxes on citizenship, Canada does not tax on that basis. So a person presumably could have a passport of Canada, but not have those ties to Canada, and therefore would not be subject to Canadian income tax. So when looking at employees coming to Canada, the key question is, are they going to be considered to be tax residents of Canada? So what's very key to this, and what Stephen was talking about, is planning in advance. So for individuals who may become tax residents of Canada, there is planning that we should look at to see how that tax can be reduced. And a lot of planning and structuring goes into that. And that is something that needs to be looked at before individuals come to Canada. The tax rates for individuals is a graduated tax rate. So it depends on the amount of income that the person earns. And it could go from 0% to over 50% for very, very high rates of income. So if I step back here and say, well, how does this apply in practice? This is what it looks like. Someone will say, you know, we want to set up a business operation in Canada. And so the first thing that usually happens is they may decide, well, we want to explore business opportunities in Canada. So maybe they're going to come to Canada to explore these opportunities. There would be no tax, obviously, at that point in time. There is no tax liability. The threshold may increase, that they say, well, we're going to appoint an independent third party to do sales for us in Canada. It's not our employee, it's an independent party. Well, there should be no Canadian tax issues for the Indian corporation in that case. Or they may say, well, we want to hire a person in Canada, and that person maybe is going to work from their home office, or we would rent an office and they will work from those offices. Then we start looking at Canadian income tax issues. They may say, well, you know, we do not want to set up a corporation in Canada. Well, then what happens with the tax is Canada says, well, the tax that is attributable, that can be allocated to this office in Canada, would be the amount that should be subject to Canadian tax. Or it may be that it has been decided to set up a Canadian corporation, in which case there are tax issues that we would have to look at. The key point here is advanced notice and of the proposed business activities. And even if there is a potential tax liability, say because we have a corporation, it's quite easy to predict what the potential tax outcomes would be. for the corporation. So what we would normally do is we'd look to get an idea of what the proposed expenses would be. We look to what the profit scenarios would be. Assume profit is A, assume profit is B, assume profit is C. We look to whether the corporation would qualify for tax credits. And based on those scenarios, it's quite easy to determine what the potential tax would be and what the profit would be that would be left in the corporation. And then that profit would be returned to the shareholders. And there we would look to, for example, the tax treaty, our tax treaty with India. And if the profit was returned by way of a dividend, there would be a withholding tax. Or if the profit may be reinvested in Canada, then obviously there's no withholding tax. But the key point here is we can plan this all in advance, as Stephen says. And by planning it all in advance, it's quite easy to predict what the scenarios would be from a tax point of view, what under the scenarios, what profit would remain in the corporation, and how should that profit be used. I think why that becomes important is also when we think, well, how will that profit be used? How will it be returned to the shareholders? Where are the shareholders? That's where the US comes into this. So we often find that having established a corporation in Canada, let's say an Indian corporation sets up a subsidiary in Canada, Canada is used, the Canadian corporation is used as a springboard, as an opportunity to invest in the US. Our tax treaty, Canada's tax treaty with the US, has got very generous tax provisions. It has reduced withholding taxes. It allows employees to work in the US under very favorable tax conditions. So what we will find is that a Canadian corporation, once established, may move on to the US and may in fact establish a subsidiary in the US. The planning opportunities are tremendous as regards our tax treaty with the US. Just by way of example, if there's a subsidiary of a Canadian company in the US or in any other country for that matter, where there is an active business in the US or in another country, then dividends can be paid from those subsidiaries to the Canadian parent company without any further Canadian income tax. So it's a very, very good planning opportunity, but does require sort of advanced planning. So when we're faced with business opportunities and investment opportunities in Canada, we try and structure it and see what the possible outcomes would be from the beginning to once the business is finally established. We're able to predict what the tax rates would be based on the various scenarios, and we're able to see what the plan would look like, assuming that in the future a US subsidiary would be established. So as I said, the range of taxes is incredibly broad, and there are no surprises. The tax rates are something that can be planned in advance, whether there is a tax liability, whether there is not for the corporation. The employee's tax liability, if they're non-residents, do they pay tax on their employment income earned in Canada? That can be planned in advance. And depending on the amount of days that the employees spend in Canada, if they're not significant, there may be opportunities that they may not have Canadian income tax liability on their employment income at all. The key point, which is what Stephen said earlier, and which is the point that I'd like to finish on, is if the planning is done in advance, with as much information as possible, it's really possible to structure an investment into Canada, both for corporations and for employees and for other individuals on a very favorable tax basis. The tax rates vary, so they allow for tremendous opportunities to do planning in advance. So I think, unless they're very specific questions, I think that would be my summary. Let's plan this in advance so there are no surprises and it's quite easy to predict. Thank you.
Yes, we can proceed to, I believe, Stephen, Tony, we can proceed to questions. I see 8 of them in total. Stephen, there is a question about NGO. Can someone possibly open up a branch of an NGO in Canada? Non-government organization.
Yes, absolutely. There is no issue with that. There are many NGOs that open up offices inside of Canada, not a problem. But as an NGO, you will have to demonstrate to the government that you have sufficient funds to pay the executive, the manager, or the person with specialized knowledge. So yes, you can open up an office, but because you will be a new NGO organization, the government will want to see that you have sufficient assets with respect to money to pay that employee that you are transferring to Canada to open up your new NGO branch or subsidiary.
Great. And the next question is quite common. Can dependent parents accompany?
Okay, so when we talk about family members permitted to immigrate or get a work permit with the main person, we are looking at situations where it is immediate family members, so husband, wife, all children under 22. If your parents want to come to Canada, they could apply for a super visa to join you inside of Canada for 2 years, and then you could extend that. You are eligible to sponsor your parents once you become an immigrant in Canada, but you will have to demonstrate that you have 3 years of income at a certain level inside of Canada to sponsor your parents. So if you came on a work permit for a year, you would use that 1 year income. Then if you got your immigration, for the next 2 years, you'd have to show income as an immigrant, and then you could sponsor your parents. It is a lottery system, so we don't let all parents come. You put your name in to sponsor, and hopefully the government will select you.
Next question. For express entry, person working for the government of Canada overseas for 5 years, is that person considered as Canadian experience?
No. You're not in Canada. We like you, but you're helping us out, but it's not Canada.
Okay. Another interesting question, COVID-19 question. During the pandemic, some of the candidates had a break in work schedule due to the lockdowns. In such cases, for the federal skilled worker immigration, can that break? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. It made sense.
I understand the question. Yeah. I understand. So unfortunately, right now, the government has not amended the employment requirements under the Canada Experience class or under the federal skilled worker class, which go into the express entry pool. So you need a minimum of 1 year full-time experience. And in the federal skilled worker program, you get bonus points up to 3 years of full-time work within the past 10. But if you have a break because of COVID, that will affect your ability to get points with respect to the employment history working outside of Canada. Right now, that is the way it stands.
There's a short and sweet question. What's the age limit for express entry?
There is no age limit for express entry, but if you are 45 years of age, you get 0 points for express entry for age, but you can make it up. For example, maybe you have a PhD, maybe you've got Canadian work experience. So there is
no age limit for express entry, but you lose a lot of points when you get to be old.
Great. And Tony, does the tax liability initiate on lending, SPR, or prior? Are there any scenarios where it could initiate before?
It initiates when someone has a home, buys a home here or has a home here, they spend time here and their families here. So it does not automatically initiate on landing if that person doesn't have those ties and say returns back to India. It could initiate before if that person has been in Canada on a work permit for a number of years, their family is here, or they have a home here, and they spend a lot of time each year. So it's not dependent on landing.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, there's a question about a specific sector under Express. So does insurance or reinsurance company fall under Express Entry Visa program?
Okay, so the Express Entry program looks at your employment history, and you get points for skilled work experience. So any form of skilled work experience qualifies. There is no list of jobs that you have to do.
While on work visa, can someone pursue a master's course at the same time without any additional visa requirements?
No. You must, first of all, make sure that you fulfill the requirements of your work permit. So if it says 35 hours a week, you're working the 35 hours a week. If you wish to study at the same time, you are allowed to, but you must apply for a study permit in addition to your work permit. So you would need both documents.
Okay, I think we have one last question so far. There's a question about someone receiving the COPR, Confirmation of Permanent Residency, which came in February 2020. And our last day was, lending was May 1st. So we couldn't meet the requirements. We applied for an extension by filling out a web form. Can we be denied entry if we choose to come a little later towards the end of the year?
Well, unless you have a new CPO, unless you have a new confirmation of permanent residence, you will not be able to enter Canada. So I would suggest you reach out to us and we will try to help you in that scenario. But right now, your confirmation of permanent residence has expired. You therefore do not have the right to come into Canada as a permanent resident.
Okay, as actually more questions are coming in. For PNPs, 10 years of work experience is required. If you're missing by 2 months for full 10 years, but have worked more than 40 hours per week, can these additional work hours be counted and considered as full 10 years?
I'm not clear what province you're talking about. PNP is province specific, and I do not believe that there is any province that has a 10-year requirement, that you have to have 10 years of work experience. So you must be getting misinformation. And remember, very important, only a Canadian lawyer or a certified immigration consultant from Canada can help you with your immigration. If you are using a local person in India, that is against the law, and if the government becomes aware of it, you can be found to have misrepresented on your application and banned from Canada for 5 years. So again, the PNP question about 10 years work experience, I'm not aware of it, and I would suggest you just reach out to us directly and we'll get clarification, because it doesn't make any sense.
Now I have one last question, and it's not clear, but I think it's about COVID-19. Is are the permanent residents, are the applications being processed? I think that's the question, being processed during COVID-19.
As I said prior, all applications are being processed. Nothing has stopped, but documents are needed to complete the process, like a police certificate. So your local police station have to be open. Medicals, your medical doctor has to be working. You need biometrics. So it will proceed until that point, and then things will stop. Also understand that many of the immigration officers are not working in the office, and the staff capacity has been reduced tremendously. So you may only be looking at a 30% staff working on cases. So again, things are open, things are working, but things are slower.
And there is one last question that I think it's the same question. I would say the ICT, are they processing issues of ICTs due to COVID?
Yes, they're processing, but because of the limited staff, the High Commission in Delhi is looking at, is this an essential type of service that's needed urgently in Canada? So they're putting those above other ones. So yes, they're processing, but some cases are being done slower because of the essentiality. And also, you need biometrics. So they may not be able to process further.
Great. We're done the questions. And please note that as our local partner, ICBC will be sharing our PowerPoint presentation with all of you. If you have any questions, you can contact them or us directly. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Back to you, Shovik or Nadira.
Thank you, gentlemen. Nadira, ma'am, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. I think we are all getting used to this new technology. So once you muted yourself, it takes some time to get back on. So no, I just wanted to say thank you to Stephen, to Tony, and to Eren for helping our members, with their issues, with their problems, and explaining so well. In fact, it kept me glued to the screen as well, because everything is explained very well. As they said, if there are any more questions, any more inquiries, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will help you get in touch with any of the above who have spoken to you today. And in fact, everybody is so keen to get to Canada. If we could just look behind where Stephen is, probably that's going to make them rush there even more. So I don't think we should, ask Stephen to disclose where he is, but I'll just tell you he's at his lake house, and it's so beautiful there. So, and I think even the view behind in Eren's office has got beautiful Toronto. And oh, Stephen is trying to get everyone to come to Canada as soon as possible. There he shows off. So anyway, getting back to, so I hope everyone's questions were answered. I hope this was a productive session. We will be having more of these sessions in collaboration with GNS, our partners, going forward. And I would really like all of you to please let us know if there's anything specific that you would like to know, any theme on which we can focus for our next webinar with GNS. It will help us to know what you're looking for, so that we have the answers prepared, and during the session it becomes more productive for all of you. Thank you very much all for being here. I'd like to again thank Stephen, Tony, Eren. Anything more from your side, Stephen, Tony, or Eren? Oh no, you're good? Okay.
We're good.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. So everybody have a good evening here, and the rest, please stay safe, stay at home. India is still battling with the COVID-19 situation. We all have to be very, very careful. So let's all follow the rules, stay home for the betterment of ourselves and of society. On that note, I want to say bye to everybody. Thank you and good night.
Good night and good morning.
And good morning, yes.